Albert Camus begins by saying that the most serious philosophical question is whether life is worth living, echoing Hamlet's dilemma, to be or not to be. This question, Camus argues, is where philosophy should start. When we ask ourselves why we should keep living, we face a profound vulnerability. The universe cannot answer our call for meaning. This disconnect between our desire for purpose and the world's lack of response is what Camus calls the absurd. The absurd arises when we realize that, despite our longing for answers, life offers none. It's like a divorce between a person and the world they live in, an ongoing struggle that can't be resolved. Camus describes it as a feeling that comes from the clash between our human need for meaning and the unreasonable silence of the universe. It's not something we can fully understand or pin down. Instead, the absurd exists in the space between us and the world. Like a strange awareness that sits in the middle. At some point, we're all living what Camus calls a mechanical life, working, commuting, eating, sleeping, and repeating it all day after day. Everything seems fine, until suddenly the question, why, appears, seemingly out of nowhere. This moment of reflection isn't triggered by any specific event, but it jolts us out of the routine, leaving us face to face with the absurd. Once we're aware of the absurd, Camus says we have two choices. We can ignore it, go back to our mechanical lives, and pretend we never asked the question. Or we can have what he calls a definitive awakening, where we keep questioning, holding on to that uncomfortable awareness of life's absurdity. Some people might choose to give up entirely, leading to either literal or philosophical suicide, essentially rejecting the absurd, by convincing themselves the world makes sense through some higher system of meaning. But Camus proposes another path, rebellion. Instead of denying the absurd, we face it, accept it, and live with it. This rebellion doesn't mean changing our actions or lifestyle. Rather, it's about changing our attitude, knowing that life has no inherent meaning, but continuing to live and find joy in that awareness. Camus uses the Greek myth of Sisyphus to illustrate this idea. Sisyphus is condemned to roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down every time he reaches the top, forcing him to start again. His task seems futile. Yet Camus imagines Sisyphus finding meaning in the very act of pushing the rock, fully aware of its absurdity. His situation hasn't changed, but his perspective has. He's awake to the absurd and chooses to keep going anyway. For Camus, living in revolt against the absurd is a way to live fully, embracing freedom and passion, without needing a higher purpose to guide us. This freedom isn't about abstract philosophical debates. It's about the everyday choices we make and the sense of responsibility we feel toward our own lives. By living without appeal to something greater, we can focus on the richness of our experiences and stop worrying about judging ourselves or others based on some moral code we can't truly understand. Ultimately, Camus argues that the absurd binds us to existence. It's not something we can escape or overcome. Instead, it's something we have to live with. Holding on to the tension between our need for meaning and the universe's silence, it's a paradoxical freedom. Liberating, yet demanding radical responsibility for how we live in the face of the absurd.